executive director for an environmental group in Santa Barbara. We're the people who created over 40 parks, toxic, pesticide-free. And we've had 5 California organic festivals, and 20,000 people attended the last one. We printed 25,000 organic resource guides. And since coming here to Palm Springs and Coachella, I said, well, we really need to do something here as well. And so with the help of my esteemed partner, Ben Lazardi, who not so incidentally brought the electric car to the desert. So thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben, very, very much. In fact, he was the first green business chosen to be incubated by the city of Palm Springs. So it's quite an honor. And so come by our booth, and I'll have one of these for each of you. Okay, so what are organics? What is sustainability? I can just very briefly say that organics is, in one sentence, is not wanting poisons on our plate. I mean, that sort of sums it all up. And growing things organically means using natural products, not petrochemical products. And so that's pretty clear for all of us. There's so much going on. The Commonweal study provided for people, well, they made the comparison that people are kind of like a rain barrel, and we get inundated with toxins from our cosmetics, from our exhaust, from our clothing, from just living and breathing sometimes the toxic air. And when that rain barrel fills up, it flows over into illness. So that's what is the cause, one of the major causes of cancer, ADD, asthma, Parkinson's. All of these have been really, there's been a nexus found by Stanford, by Sloan Kettering, by the Mayo Clinic. And it's very true and very real. When you eat live food and you try and reduce your carbon footprint, you're doing a good thing in the world. Now, are there any questions, or does anyone know what sustainability means? No. Sustainability means basically to sustain one's needs in as small an area as we can. In other words, go to the farmer's market, go to local providers rather than huge ones, because the local providers have things that are closer to home. There's no point in buying apples that are flown in from New York when we can grow them hereabouts. Isn't that true? So this is a wonderful thing. It really is of my heart, and it's really helped my health and the health of my family. I have to tell you that that there is a man who was just 110 years old this last August. He lives in Arizona, and his father was a physician. And this man happens to eat a lot of raw food. He happens to like vegetables more than he does other things, but that doesn't mean too much always, because some people like animal protein, like Winston Churchill, who ate, beef and drank a bottle of bourbon every day and smoked cigars and lived to be whatever. But this man is 110 years old. And his father, the physician, said to him one time, I'm going to tell you some secrets about longevity. And of course, he was a young man then, and he didn't really jump for joy, but he listened. And he said, I'm going to give you 5 things that I'm going to tell you about. So I'm going to give you those 5 things right now. And they are raw organic honey. Okay? They are garlic, olive oil, large bottle preferably, and cinnamon. Would you have known that? Me either. And now you're going to love the 5th one. Can you imagine what it is? It's chocolate. We get to have raw organic chocolate in our lives. Can you believe it? And it's healthy for us, and it has antioxidants. It helps our immune system as well. So feel free, okay? Don't mix it with the garlic, but maybe. And so that's really a wonderful base that we do. And I just want to share with you some of my, taking a phrase from Oprah, I want to share with some of my favorite things. In our magazine, have you all seen it? You haven't seen it yet, have you? Okay. There's a column written by someone who is a caregiver to a man who was nominated 23 times for the Nobel Prize Peace Award. And so she has a book out. That's one of my favorite things. Another of my favorite things is growing your business green and saving money. How good is that? And this, of course, is our dear Ed Beckley, who walks the talk. He lives and breathes and walks and talks and preaches all that he does in his own life. He expounds the life he lives. And this one is another wonderful book. This is written for children between 4 and 10 years old. And I got one for my granddaughter. And it's all about the second largest pollinator in our world. You know what that could be? That's right, butterflies. Butterflies are the second largest pollinator. And look at these wonderful illustrations. Wouldn't a child just get interested in gardening after seeing that? So that's a very favorite. And then, of course, the Ed Begley book. I thought I would be intimidated when I read it. I needed to read it and do a review and write a column on it. And I thought I'd be intimidated because I'm not really technically that adept. It is so cool. It is so people-friendly. I felt as though I had a friend right near me who could just say, here's how you do it in a good way. And very simple, very simple. You're going to love this. Also, what's at our booth is something called earthing. Earthing is a wonderful man who lives in our valley named Clint Ober. He was a rancher from Montana, and he noticed that the animals that lived in the field lived longer and were healthier than those that were penned up. Why is that? Well, it turned out that it was their connection with the earth. He went into the cable business and coined the phrase HBO. He then had some illness in his life, and when he was traveling around the country, kind of just thinking what is going to happen, because it was rather a serious illness, he found himself in Sedona, Arizona, sitting in the park, watching kids running barefoot in the park, full of energy, full of life. And then he saw their parents with plasticized shoes. And somehow something went off in his mind. And he did have that science technical background, and he started to think about it and thought about it. And he brought something now from his garage into full being. And you can, if you can't have your feet on the earth, I'll just give you a clue. If you can't have your feet on the earth for half an hour a day, really look into his book. In fact, look into his book anyway. One study that was recently done were 4 sunflowers. The sunflowers were picked all at the same time. They were put into vases with the same water, and they were little rods put in each vase. At the end, and they were plugged in. One was plugged into a grounding unit, and one was plugged into an electrical unit. No one knew which was which. It was rather a blind study. And after 7 days, the sunflowers that were plugged in to the electrical unit began to droop and die. And the other ones, the ones that were plugged into a grounded unit, kept straight and tall. They were thriving. And guess what? They lived 10 more days, their full life cycle. Tests are now being done in Arizona by Dr. Gary Schwartz to further amplify this, to further elucidate this. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I have the great pleasure of introducing to you my husband. he holds a teaching credential, California State teaching credential. He has been passionate about gardening and nature since he was a little kid. He's created and maintained the garden for Ella Fitzgerald, for Jeff Bridges, for consulted with Jackson Brown, and for the rest of us. My husband, Johnny Foster.
Thank you all for coming. And I want to thank my little vegetable starts here. They're really tickled to be back outside photosynthesizing. They were inside looking out the window wishing they could get in the sun. I brought some examples today of different vegetables that I'll get into in a little bit that can be grown this time of year in your winter gardens. As a gardener, much of my gardening experience was initially on the coast, which has its own set of unique things. Mild climate, but cold winters, heavy clay soils that hold the moisture very well, so you don't want to overwater. Lots of issues with fungus. But then I came to the desert and started gardening, and people say, well, what can you grow in the desert, you know? But the desert is really a miraculous growing space. The sand, you go, well, it's just sand, and the sand is wonderful for one of the components of good soil is drainage, so you got that covered right away. And the waters that are pumped up from the aquifers deep in the ground are very high in minerals. So these are really wonderful things for plants. You also, this time of year, before I get ahead of myself, so you're dealing with like your sand and water, and then there are some other tricks that you can do to make your soil optimum for the plants. And that's to add organic amendments that will provide, for example, this product line right here that I'll show you. This is their potting soil line, but they also have another line that's really marvelous. That's for the garden that comes in bigger bales. But it's a Happy Frog line made by Fox Farm, natural and organic. And the value of this is that it's high in decomposing things that will provide humic acid to the soil for your plants. So this is good to incorporate with the desert soils. In fact, one of the techniques that I like to do for planting a garden on a nice sandy soil plot in your yard, if you have a mind to do this, is to add a mixture of different organic fertilizers that I've devised through the years. Some of the ingredients are seabird guano from Peru. You could use kelp meal, azomite, which is a product that's mined from an ancient seabed that's high in minerals, and you supercharge, put that on the soil, perhaps loosen the soil, put that on the soil, and then just mulch it with a product like this. And as you water through that, the plants are going to go down into the sand, but they're getting all the humics from this material that you use as a mulch. And you can get pretty good results that way. You can also do stuff with raised bed gardens. One of the things that you'll be dealing with in the desert here when you grow things are all the critters that want to eat the vegetables that you're trying to grow. And in fact, when we were sitting up here last night at dusk, I watched all the little cute bunny rabbits out on the lawn here mowing the lawns. And that's one of the things in the desert here that you need to watch for are rabbits, ground squirrels. This time of year, the birds are migrating through, the little white-crowned sparrows with the little white stripes on their head. They're real cute, and they bounce around on the ground. They're real salad lovers, and they'll just mow your vegetables down in a hurry. So you have to deal with things like that, rats, possibly cockroaches, things like that. So everything wants to get wants to eat the garden that you're trying to grow for your family. I want to show you just quickly some of the vegetables and herbs that are available this time of year to grow. Is there anybody here who's new to the valley who isn't a resident or hasn't lived here off and on or full time? Oh, good. So this is what I describe as the second spring. In the fall, it's marvelous. The weather starts to break September into October. And if you have a mind to do it, that's the perfect window to start from seed. I just grabbed these out of my stash of seeds just as an example. You can start things from seed that will do well in the cool weather. Things like snow peas, some of the kales. Kales are the king vegetable for juicing and then stir-fried stuff. They're very nutritious. That's red Russian. This is the Siberian kale. There's all manner of kales. You can also be starting up and growing your lettuce starts. This is romaine. Other vegetables you could be starting from seed would be perhaps your chard, Swiss chard. And this is an interesting one here. This is a lovely vegetable for stir fry, or it's great in salads. Bok choy, which is a very nice vegetable. When you get your seeds, you want to look for organic, of course. I'm a real believer in organics, not only from the standpoint that it's good for you to eat the organic foods, but it's good for the soil. If you use organic techniques, you're basically feeding your soil and having a living soil that is working with lots of microorganisms that are basically eating the organic fertilizers that you provide and releasing nutrients to your plants. This particular product that I was showing you called Happy Frog, one of the reasons I like this so much is that they have introduced into it, there must be 20 or 25 varieties of mycorrhizae and bacteria. Mycorrhizae are the hairs of like the mushroom family that go out into the soil and work in harmony with the root hairs of your plants, and it acts as a supercharger. As they eat what's in the soil, the organic matter, and release the nutrients, it acts as a supercharger. Your plants can produce like up to 30% more production from them. The same with the beneficial bacteria strains. So I like to recommend for people, if they're gardening here in the desert, to get this. This is maybe pricey by your standards, but once you get this going in your garden beds and get the different mycorrhizae and bacteria going in what you're doing, they're there to stay and will help your soil structure. Let's see. Oh, yes, and on the seeds, let me give you a little bit more information on this. You want to look for organic. I recommend what's happening in the world of seeds today. Some of the corporations like Monsanto and other big seed companies are trying to corner our seed market so that eventually they would like to see you coming back every year to buy their hybridized, GMO-modified seed and put out sometimes as much as $3 or $4 for a packet of seeds. It'll probably go up more than that. So I recommend that you get organic, but also get heirloom or open pollinated varieties of seed. And what that type of seed is, it's not an F1 hybrid. It's the old-fashioned way that people did it, where the plant, you utilize the plant and it goes to seed. For example, if you were growing this is an open pollinated variety of kale, this Siberian kale. Kale's marvelous, by the way. You get it started all the way up to the hot time this summer. The plants will come up and maybe get even as tall as this, and you can be harvesting the leaves as they grow up. Demonstration, I had some lettuce seed that was maybe 6 or 8 years old, very old, and I wasn't sure if it would germinate. So I took my envelope and opened it up, and we when you do seed beds, by the way, a lot of people, like if this were a garden plot, a lot of people like to do a nice little neat row where they put their seeds in or their plants. But I like to, with lettuces and crops like this, cut and come again sweet lettuce that you can, when it gets up, you can cut it and harvest it for the salad. I like to broadcast it nice wide beds, maybe like this. And so that's what we did. We took all the stuff and just kind of went like this and just worked it into this prepared soil a little bit. And I talked to the guy about a month later and went by and looked at the lettuce, and the lettuce was just cooking. It loved it here. It had never grown in the desert before, but I asked him to let some of the lettuce plant go to seed, which he did, and save the seed for me. So I've got the first generation of true desert-grown lettuce. And the value of that is every year that you keep doing that, you keep saving seed, it become like family members. The plants get used to growing in like this harsh desert climate. and will produce even better and better for you, become more resistant to insect attacks. So it's a really good thing to do. Let's see, some other, how many people here live in like a condo or someplace where they don't really have a yard, but they maybe have a balcony or a patio, and you want to grow a garden, but I just don't have any place. The association won't, let me do it out in the flower beds and stuff. Well, I'm going to show you a couple techniques for starting up your own instant garden vegetable plot by using, and I recommend if you do this, get something that's really, really high quality like this Happy Frog product. And what I'm going to do is, because I don't want this to get all over the car, I'll pretend I do this. I'm going to cut some holes for drainage and flip the bag over. So there's my drainage for my grow container. Then I'm going to take a sharp instrument, and I think what I want to plant is, let's see, let's plant some herbs. I've got a few herbs here. These are fun to grow. If any of you like Thai cooking, this is lemongrass. If you like French cooking, this is French sorrel. So, you can grow all kinds of interesting things. I've got some marjoram. So what I would do in something like this, take a look at it. That bag I could probably put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as many as 9 plants in there. So what I would do is I'd come along on the bag, and I just X marks the spot. I open it up. Let's take this sorrel here. Here's a little technique if you're growing vegetables. You pop it out of the container. You want to take a look at the root structure. This one is a little bit root bound because the sorrel is a very fast grower, and in a container like this, it gets root bound pretty easily. So what I'll do is I'll tease the roots a little bit, and what that does is it stimulates it to want to, as it comes out of that shock of growing out into our medium here, our medium. So what I'll do, and I'm going to set some of this aside to show you some other things that you can do. So I scoop out a spot for it, and I tuck it down in there. It's planted. And so then I go along, and I can continue doing that. But let's put in the maybes. Now, something you want to consider, let's say you're on your patio, and let's say this is your patio at your condo, and it's facing south. So this time of year, the sun's going to be down on the horizon this way, coming in at an angle. So you want to put your taller vegetables on the north side of your bag. They'll grow up like this, and step it down to the lowest vegetables on the front side of your bag. But just for the sake of demonstration, I'll just pop this in any old way. So I'm going to put in one more to show you, and then this, by the way, is I worked at a school where the Hispanic people were poor and money's tight, and I wanted them to grow stuff, but going to the nursery and buying expensive plant starts and stuff is hard for families like that. So you can go to the market and get this particular plant in the produce section. Look for one that's got a good crown on it with some of the roots still showing, and you can plant it and grow your own for a very reasonable amount. I showed them the same thing with garlic and beans and things from the market that are cheap to use and will work very well. So then there's 2 like that. They're tucked in. Now, also the beauty of this bag planting like this is you don't need to water very much because this is a super enclosed system with the plastic. And you might need to come along once a week. You can do the old technique of sticking your finger into the first knuckle and see if it feels dry. Or the plants will tell me if they look a little bit droopy. It's time to come along and just water them real well, and then forget about it for at least a week. This time of year, I had a gentleman that was growing vegetables like this through the winter. He grew kale, and then come springtime, he says, "Well, can I grow something else?" I said, "Sure." So he put in some tomato plants and got a second crop. The thing is, when you use a container setup like this, you are pulling out a lot of nutrients out of the medium for your plant material. So another technique that you can use to fertilize your plants. And I'm going to go into my magic grab bag here. You all have sprayers like this or leftover Windex sprayers or something that would go into the trash. You can restream it as a useful tool. You can use something like this to make a liquid fertilizer for your plants. One technique is to make what are called manure teas. And if any of you are composting or have worm bins and have some of the nice gooey stuff at the bottom that looks like it's pretty much ready to go, you can take a nice handful of that and put it in let's say a gallon of water and let it sit for a day or two. And then strain that off through like maybe some pantyhose or a coffee filter to get the big chunks out and put it in a bottle like this. And then come along and do a thing called foliar feeding. This one's got a nice adjustable nozzle, so if I want to feed the soil a little bit, I can straight stream it. But if I want a foliar feed, I put it on the mist spray, and I go along and just give the plant a bath, maybe once a week or twice a week. And foliar feeding is wonderful because the plants not only take in nutrients through the roots, but they also will take it in right through the leaves. It's a very fast way to feed. In fact, I recommend foliar feeding for your citrus trees. I look for them in the spring when the buds are just starting to break on the tree, and I'll foliar feed with an organic liquid fertilizer that has a lot of phosphorus. Phosphorus, by the way, the NPK you see on fertilizer bags is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium content of the fertilizer. Something high in phosphorus, phosphoric acid, stimulates plants to put out root growth and also to flower. So like I will apply that before the citrus flowers break, and you'll get a tremendous flower set. Everything's happy. And you wait till the little fruits are starting to form, and then I'll go back and feed them nitrogen to size the fruit. If you feed them nitrogen just before they flower, the tree's going to go, oh, hey, conditions are great. I think I'll just grow and not make any fruit this year, and you won't get good fruit production. That's a little trick I've learned through the years to do. By the way, on the seed saving at Agua Caliente School where we did this is a variety of open pollinated popcorn. And I brought it to show the kids. You save this. Let's say you grow a corn crop here and you harvest your corn. You save one of your open pollinated varieties, an ear like this. And then the next season when you're ready to go, you just pop it like that and you've got seed that you can plant. By the way, on corn, here's a little trick. People say, well, I've got just a little space. I don't think I could grow corn. I'm almost 100% positive that in one bag like this, if you put in maybe 1 or 2 plants, you can get corn. And the way you do it is you wait for the corn plant to come up and start to form the female part, the silk, and then it will tassel the male parts on the top. And when the pollen's flowing and the hairs are on the female part of the plant, I play honeybee and just take them and go down and hand pollinate. And you can raise corn in a small area. You don't need, the old adage was, well, you got to have a 10 by 10 block so they'll cross pollinate. Well, that's true, they will cross pollinate, but if you have limited space in your garden and want to try it, you can do that. So those guys. Now, let's say in starting these, I wouldn't recommend it for corn because corn does better starting it right in the ground. But let's say that I wanted to plant these. It gets to be about February, March, April, and I go, I think I'd like to start these up in the garden. Well, let me show you a couple tricks. This is, of course, it's free-range organic eggs. That's all. Estelle and I are into organics. And inside this is a nice little paper carrier. Now, this is perfect for starting up seedlings. One technique is to, after you've cracked the eggs, try to not damage them. Try to have at least half of the eggshell showing and stick the eggshell back in the container. Fill that up with your good organic potting medium in each eggshell. Little dimple, drop your corn seed in and water it real good. And then a technique is to put this in like a little plastic shopping bag, vegetable bag or whatever, and make a mini greenhouse. And you're off to the races and getting something started. If you don't use the eggshell, the eggshell, it comes up, it's in the eggshell. some people go, well, I think I better punch a hole in the bottom so there's drainage. Well, you can do that, but you don't need to do it if you're just very careful about watering. For example, on these sunflower microgreens that we grew, these are really wonderfully nutritious. You can grow a lot of food for your family in just a little thing like this, or in a flat. This doesn't have any drainage holes. It's got a Happy Frog medium, organic seed, and I just got the soil wet enough so that they would germinate with a plastic cover, and I took it off, and I just very sparingly water this when, again, the plants tell me, they get droopy or the soil fleas will, but you don't want to overwater. So the same thing with your starts in the eggshell. You water them, but just enough so that the soil stays damp and not real wet. Then you take the egg, when you're ready to transplant, you pull the little eggshell out with the plant in it, you go over and make a little hole in your garden where you're going to plant it, and then take the eggshell and give it a little crack to break it up a little bit, stick it in there, and the roots will go right out into the soil. The eggshell provides calcium and phosphorus for the plant, so it's a pretty cool way to do it. If you don't want to do the eggshells, you can put soil in here. Like this, and put your seeds in and do it as I was describing. So that's another possibility there. Let's see what else is in my little grab bag. Oh yeah, this is another some of the this one we did put drain holes in, but this was years ago when we were doing at the farmers market. We were doing microgreens and wheatgrass for people. But you can get these for free at, you go into the salad bar and some of the health food stores, and they'll have these made out of recycled or recyclable paper. And you can also use these for a planting tray. But if you are more of a traditionalist that wants the container look, you can use 4-inch plastic, or these are 4 packs, 6 packs. You can use these and start your plants up. So going over some of the vegetables that you can start this time of year, we've got the snow peas, kale. We've got leeks and onions. There's basically about 3 types of onions. The ones I would recommend, if you like to use onion greens in your stir fry and salads and things, get the bunching. There are green bunching onions that are available that come up and kind of clump out as they grow, and you can cut the greens off as you need them. Or you can get the other type that make bulbs. There's a warm weather variety and cold weather variety of onion, but here in the desert, it's not such a big deal. Don't worry about that. So you can plant onions.
I have a question, Mr. Foster.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about the deliciousness of that stevia plant, and can it be planted in our gardens? And if you come by our booth, we'll give you some dessert.
Yeah. Okay. This is another herb.
Thank you.
Herb plant that we give when people come to our booth. We say, go ahead and try. We'll let them try a little of the sunflower microgreens, and they're generally very pleased with the flavor of it. And then we say, well, for dessert, would you like to try some of this plant? This plant is this plant's called stevia. And if any of you use stevia as an alternative sweetener, this is the plant that it's derived from, which would be like a kind of a white powder type substance, which they put through, and chemically alter it to get it kind of like sugar, I guess, to get people into the sugar thing. But you can grow a plant like this and go along and harvest the leaves as it's growing, put them out on a dish on the counter and let them dry so that they get crispy. And then you can grind them up, put them in we don't like to use a plastic so much as maybe a little glass jar or something. And then when you have your coffee or you want to use a sweetener, you just take the leaves and sprinkle them on. It's an interesting sugar substitute that's good for you. Yes, thank you.